All right, everybody, welcome to WebGL Summer Solstice meeting. I'm Tony Parisi, co-organizer. With me, as always, is my co-organizer, David Hernandez. Say hi, David.
Hey, guys.
Thank you very much to Game Salad, our host. There are no Game Salad reps here, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. I'm working with them as a contractor as my day gig to feed my WebGL obsession. And what they do is they have an easy game creation tool, drag and drop game creation. You can put together side scrollers, ISO view games, 2.5D kind of stuff, no hardcore 3D, but with absolutely no programming. It's all drag and drop. So you think VRML or X3D routes, connecting up data, or direct show routing graphs, or those kind of technologies, which is actually a really great way to program. So they've got a really faithful and following of lots of developers, thousands of developers, and they sell a tool. It's a Mac tool, it's a PC tool. They can do iOS games. They're working on an Android engine now. I don't think it's been released. I may be wrong about that. They also have an HTML5 engine that's in development. You can build sort of free games in their online arcade. Great people, fun project. I'm actually doing random stuff and building an ad server with them. And they're really great, so they graciously hosted. And as always, Kronos Group, the folks who brought you WebGL, sponsor this meetup. They pay for the beer and food, and the projector screen I rented today. So I'd like to thank them. And then I want to talk about our speakers today. Our featured speakers are David Arendash and Theo Armour. You saw them mentioned on the website. I am not going to play accordion. You guys were saved. Theo came up with a great idea for a roundtable that we're going to do that at the end, so after the formal presentations. You really didn't want to hear me play accordion, I'm telling you. Not even a little bit. I'm a polymath, and I'm pretty good at it for 10 weeks in, but seriously, you don't want to hear that yet. Maybe in a year, we'll do a command performance. So anyway, we also have a special surprise guest who I'm going to reveal in about 2 seconds here. So I think everybody's probably heard the news by now today. It's big news that the leaks have been confirmed. It's no longer leaks and suspicion anymore, but Microsoft is shipping WebGL and IE 11. Yes. So for this group of San Francisco developers, 400 strong, I think that's probably a pretty big relief at this point, and a hooray. But they're more than just accepting WebGL's inevitability. They're actually taking it quite seriously, and they look like they're putting a lot of emphasis on making a really good implementation. I was over at the Microsoft Build Conference today, and I actually saw someone present. There was a WebGL presentation called Hyperfast Web Graphics with WebGL, given by our special surprise guest here, Frank Olivier from Microsoft. So I ran into Frank before the show, and I said, it's so coincidental, but I'm doing a meetup in 2 hours. Can you make it over here? And he reshuffled all his meetings he had, and he came over to see us, so this is great. So what I would appreciate is, after we get through the presentations, as part of the roundtable, if Frank can hang out for about an hour, then we can get into doing some roundtable stuff, and you can get on your pulpit, we can ask him questions. I'm sure people might want to throw tomatoes and it's used to it, but probably it's what's that?
Get a demo?
Oh yeah, he can demo some stuff. He actually gave some great. So here's my blog posting that they're talking about this today. He actually showed some really cool demos, and what I liked the most was this 2D tutorial, which is just so much more interesting than that stupid square I do in my book and John's did for the website, which is like, here's graphics, right? And it's just a white square. Well, when he's done, can you show that later with the image?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Warping? Yeah, great. So it's basically a useful piece of 2D using WebGL, so you get full hardware acceleration, and vertex shading, and all that. So that's fantastic. So welcome, Frank. And with that, that's all I wanted to say. I got a little report on my blog site about this stuff. There is one other announcement, very self-serving, but my second book is in pre-release. So if you go on O'Reilly, you can get the early chapters. There's only 5 of them. It sort of half duplicates some stuff from the first book. But over the summer, I'll be shooting out chapters. It'll be about half done in 3 weeks, and fully done in September, probably. So you get the early release now, you get the book for half off. So please, and of course, you can give me feedback and all that stuff too. I'd love that. All right, great. So without further ado, I think we want to have Theo up first to talk about his Jaanga awesome Globe, global GIS visualization with WebGL and 3JS.
Right.
Theo, come on.
Okay.
Let's switch up your cable. There you
Let's
go.
monitor over. Right.
How did you do that before?
Just go in there.
No. Need some help with that?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So I speak from time to time at these things. So each time I try and do a little bit of a demo about what's going on. So you can, the print's a bit small, but it does say Kronos Group. It says Ken Russell and WebGL Dev, and Tony and Damien get a plug-in here too. What we're looking at is a globe that I've been working on in 3D for quite a while now, and so we're going to go to another version of it. What I'm going to do, this is the earliest version of it. I'm going to show you a lot of the things that I'm working on, and then I'm going to try and explain how I made them, okay? So the first half is going to be showing you the cool bits, and the rest half is going to be more techy and wordy and stuff like that. What we're looking at is a 3D globe built using 3JS on top of WebGL. And the planes you see here are, there's a flight simulator called Flight Gear. And these are all the imaginary planes that are now Flight Gear users all over the world are playing with. And this got me going a while ago in February, and it's quite a nice demo, and I can show you some more complicated aspects about this. And I might just switch over and do some of that. The problem with all of this is that you zoom in and that map gets fuzzy. Okay, you don't go in and see. You can't zoom into a globe. Or the other thing that they do is then they have a slippy map. Google Maps, and you go in and do that, but then it's not a globe. Okay, and then the other thing about it is it has no bumps. Mother Earth, we know, has lots of lady bumps. There are mountains and there are hills and things like that, and the Earth is full of wiggly bits. And again, we can't just show this on a globe. So that was the planes want to be able to fly through the mountains, and so. That was sort of going on to the next stage of this was how can we get into the mountains and how can we show that? The first stage is sort of kind of the globe that you saw earlier, where I've taken OpenStreetMaps or Google Maps or MapQuest maps, which are flat, a Mercator projection, and I've reverse Mercatored them. Okay, take the flat map and wrapped it back around the globe. And that works, except there's a hole in the top and the hole in the bottom, because that way you get 85, you can actually make a square. And they've worked this out all based on tiles that you can go in and zoom in anywhere. So there are still some issues. You can see it's not always flat and so on and so forth. But I mean, I can, actually I'm going to go now to the, I'll just show you. We can zoom in. Don't get in there. There we go, okay. Quite deep, and down into Google Streets, and it's quite fast using OpenStreetMaps. Zoom in as far as you want, but then again, this was not so good because it was flat. Okay, no mountains to fly through. So the next version I worked on, which there we go. We're now beginning to see the globe that you really want to fly through. Now. And we can see, so what's going on here, the colored sphere is the ocean, okay? That's the normal sea level. And I've totally exaggerated everything. So everything's magnified by like hundreds of times bigger than it should be. And the reason, because, I'll show you what the Earth really looks like. If I go down to sort of level 2, even there is still pretty interesting. But if I go to what the globe really looks like, zero scale, you're getting both globes, they're so close that they're interacting with each other. You don't see, it has no bumps, okay? It's boring, okay? But that's, if we're gonna do flight simulators and games and artificial realities and things like that, we wanna have things that we can fly through at any scale. We wanna augment the reality, we wanna change things and make it fun. So let's go, supposing we do it the other way. There, the oceans are sticking out. And the continents are in. And actually, let's see if I can show you some of this. Okay, there's the Atlantic Ocean. Sorry, the debug things and whatever. And the Atlantic Ocean is very flat, except for this ridge, this thing that goes in. Whereas now let's go over to the Pacific Ocean, and look at that. Okay, completely different. Prickly bits all over the place. So very, things we would never see normally, okay, that we can do when we start reimagining the globe and start going to new kinds of user interfaces and things like that. Where's Don? Okay, I've got a version, well, let's see, which has got materials, and we can do toon shading on the globe. That's maybe for another discussion. So then, that's quite nice, and I've got different zoom levels. And this, okay, that's zoom level 1. This is just the same as Google Maps and whatever. And I got into all the way down to zoom level 3. But there, where do you get elevation data? Okay, that's the issue. I mean, all of the flat maps are easy to get, but how do you get the height of stuff? So this, I started getting the elevation data from Google Maps. They have an elevation service. But everything I want to do should be low cost and things like that. So I didn't want to do the business thing with it. And so basically, downloading this ASCII data, I'll get about 25,000 elevations per day. I get my little bits, save them, and so on and so forth. But there's no way I'm going to get more detail than down to level 3. Well, Google Maps and OSM go down to level 18, so there's a lot longer ways to go. So I was flummoxed. I mean, there was almost no way I was going to proceed. And then came up with a trick. We'll do this one first, I guess. Unflatland. Flatland was a thing invented in the 1800s, but that's if you're a mathematician and whatever. So this is called unflatland. And how did I there? Okay, do you see where you are? San Francisco Bay. There's Mount Diablo, Mount Tan. Okay. And I'm now going to go to Flatland 2, the higher res version of it. And we'll play around with that for a bit. Zoom in, do whatever we want. Let's go. Now I've got the entire, Machu Picchu, wherever we want to go. I mean, put in the latitude, longitude, and well, wait a bit. Okay, and there, let's zoom out again a bit. But I've got the elevation data for virtually the entire world. How did I do that? Well, you see the picture up here on the left. The trick is to keep the elevation data in bitmaps. And each color is an elevation. Bitmaps download tremendously fast. They're highly compressed. And you can get them the exact same size as the tiles that you're working on in the map, and just overlay them one another. Well, actually, this bitmap is huge. It's 3,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels. So what I do is cut out a little portion of it. Okay, get it onto a canvas. You get image data on canvas. Select the rectangle you want. Copy that. Put it on a. Just get that data. And well, I'm jumping ahead. This is the bits that I'm going to be explaining later on. But you're getting the idea that this bitmap is critical for getting this elevation data. And I'm actually, Tony, you're from Sicily?
Well, somebody
in your family is, right. Okay, so we're now going to go to Sicily. Let's get this guy out of the way. But I mean, there's just some, Mount Etna and stuff like that. And it's just so much fun to go in and play with this and go and see what's going on and enjoy it. There's a lot of different maps. So I want to do a satellite view. And I have to change points of view. So we'll see. Maybe we'll change to another point of view or not. Let's do another. Let's change the exaggeration scale on this. That will force them to jump to somewhere else. And we do. Okay, there's something happening. Okay, so we've changed the style of map to a satellite view, and the only thing I'm not updating what city we're in or what town we're looking at. We're probably in Geneva or something like that. And the lighting is a bit rough. But this is all under development. But you can see what's going on. And okay, so now we're going to go to. I should probably change the skin again. Okay, now here's the next thing. We want assets. We want to have things in the map. Maps, Google Maps is very nice, but it's just sitting there. In real life, cars are moving, planes are going around, things happen. And we can't have millions of things. I mean, what we want to have is that you go to a particular map, and just the things on that map are loaded on demand. Yeah, the plane crashes and sinks and goes into the water. It's a magic airplane. But what it is that every map goes and queries a Google spreadsheet. On the Google spreadsheet, there's the URL for the JavaScript file. So, and the Google spreadsheet is very good. It has basic MySQL queries. So you can say latitude less than this, greater than that, longitude greater than this, less than that. Bingo, finds all the assets just on that map and goes and gets them. So let's go to Cape Town, because the ones with asterisks are the ones that, because I just got this going 2 nights ago. So basically it just goes, queries the spreadsheet and brings down so there's a little cube flying over Cape Town itself. Just got this going, but we should be able to, whatever goes into a JavaScript file, whether it's JSON data, whether we work with the GLFT stuff, or if it's just any methods or anything in the JavaScript, just automatically lands in whatever tile you're looking at. So with that, how much?
You should get into how you implement it, because then.
Right, okay, right. So it's time to go into that sort of thing, okay. And let's reload there. Okay, so we've done all of that. So one of the things, Henry Bennett was one of the people that sort of got us all going. And I want to, this slide should be the second. So I wrote this slide last night, and this is about user interface. We want things to come to you. We don't have too much with user interfaces. We go out there and we go out there and we get lost. So I like his statement that user interface, when we're working with user interface, it comes here. But this is the first slide I was working on, and I said, hello. That was 2D. And I thought, am I going to have to make all these other slides in 2D? No, I've got to eat my own dog food. So I wrote this really bad routine which uses location hash, and it's very easy to put in new text. But it was just written last night because I didn't want to work anymore in 2D. Okay, so had to find my real dog food. So UI is critical thing in all of this, and to a certain extent because the UI of the future. And as Microsoft knows, that will be in 3D. We're going to leave the desktop. We're going to stop being skeuomorphic, and we're going to be able to manipulate. You've got the Oculus Rift and things like that. We're going to start. So all of this that I'm working on, the globe, and all of that is beginning to think, how do we get into a 3D user interface? And I see this happening around in interesting ways. I built on a library called 3JS, but there's another wonderful library called Scene.js. And Scene.js just had a major revision last week, and let's see, geometry or something like that. This is 2D, but let's see, that's wrong. Okay, I don't know how I get back out of here. Okay, may have to reboot. I'm just going to reload. Okay. There were. Oh, okay, that was nice. Some material. Okay, there. Okay. There's code and there's 3D, and it came here. Okay. On the left-hand side, there's my table of contents. I just go click, 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 and whatever comes here, and I see it both in 2D and in 3D. This is how we should start thinking about how we deliver our 3D content and code and whatever to each other. Now, the fascinating thing was, when I started looking into this, these libraries are competitive, Scene.js and 3JS, whatever. So Lindsay, who wrote this, I dug into the source code of this, and Scene.js, the source code for what you just saw is, and there's part of it, but I dug into this a little bit further, it's actually Mr. Dube's source code that he wrote to do, 3JS person. Okay, so this has been around for several months, but Scene.js started applying it in Lindsay took Mr. Dube's code and put it into his stuff. And also, the other bit that was interesting that Lindsay picked up on, this is the 3JS document file. And it's on GitHub, and so is Lindsay's, and they both pretty much use the iframe, JavaScript ways of having the two screens and building up a whole document. So they're really, really, bouncing off of each other. And this is really great because Mr. Dube has a terrible example. Because this kind of code is, you have to go there, okay? You gotta go there, now how do I get back, okay? That's the old kind of interface. I mean, it is 3D, but this is not, now, I've lost, my presence. I've lost where I was. Okay. No, I'm gonna get out of full screen and close this one. Right. So that's what we don't want to do anymore. Okay. Lindsay, just bring it all here. Okay. So that, let's get back to the talk. Okay. So, yeah, okay, so getting back to the globe, I mean, the globe, I begin to see, I want to have everything in my user interface accessible. What, by everything? Hello, I want the whole world. So I love looking at the world. I'm going to think of the next future revisions of that globe being access to everything I own and everything everybody else owns. We can all get to it through a global kind of interface. So that's a big thought as I'm writing this stuff. Another thing, I will go on with Mr. Dube. The code that I write is short and sweet, 500 lines kind of thing. And this is what follows what 3JS is about. I build examples. Most of you I know are coders, and you do the big, difficult, complex products. I do the silly things that you say, oh wow, you did that with my code. Okay, that's what I hope I can do. And so I want things that are short and sweet, that are, that are kind of electric. Everything is hosted on GitHub. Even this demo, all day long, been pushing it up to GitHub. It's free, free as in beer, free as in open source. But the other thing, I use GH pages. So I wasn't sure, I can switch and do the whole demo off of the GitHub GH pages. So most people just use it for just keeping source. But GitHub is a wonderful way of hosting, a whole app. And then, because you've hosted your app there, all your necessary files, all the JavaScript files, are also up there and can be used as a content delivery network. So for example, Mr. Dube's JavaScript files, the 3.min.js is up there. So I link to that. I don't bother to download it to my server and then to my machine and then upload it. All my source code is just grabbing off of Mr. Dube's or my source code on GitHub. So it's a wonderful, and I don't have to pay for the bandwidth. I have servers, but I'm trying to code the kinds of examples I'm trying to code. I want kids to be able to play with in Africa, China, whatever. And they're not going to run servers. So everything I do in my code, I want anybody else to be able to follow and do anywhere in the world. So those are sort of overarching things. So yes, no servers, we talked about that. And small is beautiful. I mean, all those globes and things that you've been seeing, 300 lines, 500 lines. I mean, we have these extraordinary libraries. I mean, these are things you can write in a day or two, or something like that, and really, I think have a great effect. Anyway, so let's see. Did I get that right? Oh. We're not moving forward. Okay. Then Awesome Globe, because it's based on OSM. How did I get the name? Okay, and it's awesome, or it's oh so me, or something like that. Anyway, A good app always has to have a little name or something like that, so people can remember it. Let's see, I've already talked, we're not moving, okay. My little app isn't behaving, okay, and we don't need to go there. So I ended up I did a lot with Google Maps, but Google Maps has all these limitations. OpenStreetMap is your friend, okay? If you're gonna do anything with mapping, few usage limits, you can use it all day long, download all the stuff that they want, and they're not gonna shut you down, whereas Google Maps, unless you're, using the business service. I would use it, and, for a professional app, for hacking and for getting going, OSM, OpenStreetMap, is definitely the way to get going. The technology is called Slippy Maps, and I think we're going to Slippy Maps website. Slippy Maps on OSM. Is my web connection? Okay. Oh, there we are. Okay. There's a really good explanation about how these maps, all of these maps, are just PNG files. You have the Zoom gives you the top folder, and the 18 folders, Zoom 1 through 18. The X, and then you do X and Y. The second folder is all the longitudes, and so if you have a Zoom of 2, you could have just basically 2 files. 4, you're gonna, whatever you get, just multiply it all out. Get all the X's down, and then the Y's are the next folder. So there's no database mechanism required. You can use these maps in any app, 2D, 3D, whatever. The code was just so much easier to play with. Now they all have APIs, okay, and you can go and do all, stuff with all their widgets and gadgets and spend hours learning the widget. But if you just learn how to use their URL, okay, in 5 minutes you're adding, a map bit to your website, and as long as you don't, not killing them with usage and having multi-million clicks per day and stuff like that, they seem to be happy with it. Give them credit and so on and so forth, but that was just one of the lessons, is that this XY tile system is a piece of cake to work with, and actually a lot of fun, and there's really good support, because one of the things that you're going to have to happen is the reverse Mercator, the math to go from the globe up to a Mercator projection and then back, a barrel full of PhDs can work on it. But the wiki on their site gives you half a dozen routines for going back and forth, latitude to tile, tile to latitude, and so you can go back and forth, or how to take a point X, Y, and Z and stick it on the Earth. I mean, it's all, there's some workhorse applications there, so not that difficult to do. The other thing, and took me a long time to figure out, and actually in the end was so easy. You want to take a bitmap and place it on the globe. So I tried doing flat planes and having innumerable flat planes and things like that, and bending things and whatever. But it turns out 3JS has a segment. You say how much phi you want, what angle this way, what angle this way. So it's a sort of a curved. Imagine latitude and longitude is one of those quadrants, and I can't. It's a truncated sector or a truncated segment or something like that. I can't even find the name for what this bent piece is. But you can make it easily in 3JS by specifying that you want a sphere that's only a partial sphere. And then you just put the bitmap on it, and bingo, it clamps to all the edges, and the curve is done, and you didn't have to do any thinking whatsoever. It was just totally magic and free that I did. Take the URL, put it, give it a material, and put it on this quadrant-y thing, and bingo, it's all taken care of. I went about 200 lines of code that I've been mucking around with, and there it is. Those globes are pretty good. The other thing was you're dealing with the space is so complicated. You have latitude and longitude, okay, which whatever. You have the X and Y tiles, but then you have X and Y within the tile. Then somebody gives you, like the spheres here, spherical coordinates. My brain just would short circuit. I would inevitably, and then you have I and J, and so on and so forth, because you're doing loops. I totally got lost. What I did in the end was a linear array. No more X and Y's, no nothing. And I've talked from time to time, just one single array, very long numbers. All I had to make sure was that the canvas had the right number of pixels, the quadrant had the right number of vertices, and the bitmap image of from OSM all had the right number of pixels. And I put them on top of one another, and then sometimes be off by 1 pixel and just make a little correction. But I mean, I was dealing with 3 things in 3 arrays. Whereas if you have I and J, X and Y, and lots of arrays, there's like about 16 different ways for it to go wrong. So I've never worked with this long string. Oh, you don't know what's in there, or where is anything, okay? I know Tim can tell me where things are in a singular array, because he's got you programmers actually know things, whatever. But for me, it was just terrifying, just to have thousands of numbers and not knowing where anything was. But just the total number of pixels just made it work. And as long as I had the 3 numbers right, put them one on top of another, it works. So what I did was I would end up having a variable name that would be tile X, LAT, I, and whatever else, all in one variable name, so that I would know that wherever I use that variable, that I was doing, because X is sideways and is always first, and Y is vertical and it's always second. Latitude is vertical, but it's always first, okay? And longitude is always second. So between the two, you would always, inevitably, in an IJ loop, you would guess the wrong one and things would go off and you'd have this wiggly map, but you didn't know whether it was New Jersey or Afghanistan. It just goes, anyway.
Welcome to the world of graphics.
Right, the name of the variable was crucial, okay? 3JS, I mean, memory management, just as long as you reuse that variable name time and time again, he does all the garbage collection, no need to worry, just wonderful. The elevations, I told you that, I mean, already, most of this, I mean, the elevations came out of the bitmaps. And it's just such a powerful way of, the original bitmaps that I was, arrays that I was looking at, 5 gigabytes of ASCII data. Once they're into bitmaps, it's 88 megabytes. Okay, I mean, huge saving. And those bitmaps, I mean, they cache, they behave properly. It's so much fun. So
Hey, we gotta go to Q&A here.
Okay, right, okay, right. So then, right, spreadsheets are good. Oh, you're right. I just got this going Monday night, but that's the little spreadsheet on Google Spreadsheets. You know, I put in the city, I put in the URL. Well, right now it's local, but I mean, I will have this cross-origin servers, no problem. These, you know, I will have your avatar, okay, on your server coming into that map, no problem. And just with a latitude and longitude and what zoom and bingo. I mean, 250,000 items of data, bingo, on that globe. You know, I'll go on. I mean, things like exaggerated scale. I mean, that was playing with the physics. Do cartoon physics. I know it's a map and it's reality, but the fun thing is augmenting that. I don't care whether it's a game or reality. You know, we've got the tools to create a buzz out of it. Anyway, so it turns out I have a friend in flight gear. Okay, my friend from Australia lives in France. Has gotten excited by the globe. He's been doing flight gear for years, and he's totally knows nothing about 3D. But you know, because he does the communications where the plane bits came in. But he had this idea that it was all numbers, and flight gear has a lot of airplanes. 487 airplanes. There's one of them. That is, so he is getting all this data available online, now for free, and that's all. This is all in 3JS on the web right now. So, I mean, I don't know, with GLFT or something like that, once we have all these beautiful planes to be able to fly around that globe. I just got this morning. I mean, these are really extraordinary detail on these. And we're going to have it all in 3JS and all available on the web. So, something can get it into some nice app. This could be sort of a nice, real cloud pleaser. All in a single JS file. So anyway, I hope that was fun. I hope you learned something. And if anybody wants to talk maps or talk about, because we're doing everything sort of Google Earth, Second Life. It's all doable within, as a demo, as a way of getting going, as a way of showing things. It's all doable very, very easily. I hope I've showed you that. Thank you.
All right, Theo. Let's do a little Q&A and we can follow up more in the roundtable. I'm going to start the Q&A. So, you mentioned it a couple of times. I want to make sure people understand this, and I'd like you to talk about it a little bit. You have no server running.
Yeah, no,
So
it's all on GitHub.
when you're getting those, when you're fiddling out there grabbing data from those various data sources,
Yeah.
where does it go? Like you're collecting it up and sticking it in Google spreadsheets, you said, right? So some of that data is going into a Google spreadsheet. So it's running on Google server, not yours, right?
Well, the Google spreadsheet just holds the links, okay, and does the MySQL.
So that's like your management tool, is what you're saying.
That's an asset manager.
That's a static GIS.
I don't know what that means. You said it's a static GIS.
Okay, it's a geographic information system, but it doesn't have a real database behind it because everything is static in the spreadsheets.
Right, so you are collecting stuff and throwing it in a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
You have
No,
a piece
no,
of
just
code.
the link to where that JavaScript file is.
Where are
That
those
JavaScript
bitmaps?
file.
What about the bitmaps? Those
The bitmaps, they're OSM. So those are all just being downloaded.
So
Those
it's all
PNGs with the elevation data. So it's a big mashup.
It's a mashup.
Yeah, right.
You don't have to put anything on your server, even your JavaScript code, because you get that on GitHub.
Yeah. Nothing's on my
That's
server.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a huge
now I've
mashup.
switched over to the GitHub version of the top. And that is grabbing things from everywhere.
Yeah. So this is different from your data visualization of the stock market thing, where you actually did batch collect things, and you were dumping
No,
Google
that was also
spreadsheets.
using a Google spreadsheet.
Right. So you had some other program running that was a trigger on the Google spreadsheet
Right,
to
right.
fetch more stuff
Well,
nightly, right?
Google spreadsheets have their own triggers.
Right. That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah.
So you're answering my question,
Right.
even though you
All
don't
of this
realize
should be done by, a kid who has no money should be able to do this.
And they just
And
throw
no-
some JavaScript and a trigger in a Google spreadsheet, and they can they can filter some data.
Right.
Amazing. When you get the PNG data, are you converting that to 3GS meshes? Are you generating
Right,
meshes
so
from the PNG data?
that little quadrant thing from I would just say that it would have 120 vertices on X and Y.
And then you're
that would
sticking the
exactly
elevations
match
in.
up with the pixels for that tile of the elevations, and would exactly match up with the pixels from OSM.
Yeah, this is a perfect opportunity to teach yourself some GLS out, because you can do that stuff in Shader and not waste all that vertex memory.
Yeah, right.
You can make this stuff really lean and
Next
mean.
demo, I'm
Not
not
to
going to
geek
learn
out.
shaders. I gotta get there. My CAD CAM where we didn't have shaders.
So you're actually not using vertex texture shading here.
Sorry?
You're not actually doing any sampler in the
I can't hear you.
So if you run your vertex shader, are you actually looking up any bitmap data in your vertex shader, or is this all?
No, because I'm using
3JS
library. I'm
is
using
fine.
3JS. That's all taken care of for me.
Ah, okay.
I just, say I want a texture, and I give it the URL of the bitmap, brings it in, and does all that work for me.
It's just a regular Phong or Lambert shader. He's feeding it the
Phong, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Phong. He's just feeding it the pixels.
Yeah.
So the point is, you could feed that elevation data directly to a different vertex shader. That's what the pros
Yeah,
do,
right. We'll
So
get-
that is
we'll
a
get
good
there.
excuse to teach yourself
Yeah, right, exactly.
GLSL
Yeah,
at some
yeah.
point to make this thing scream.
Yeah.
Because that stuff takes a lot of memory in 3GS. The other thing to look at, and I don't know if this is real yet, but I saw a class in the 3GS libraries called buffer geometry, which is ideal for static geometry. I don't know if you're using that yet, but
No, right.
I think it's going to save you a lot of memory and
Yeah.
resorts, and does all this fancy stuff that goes in these really fast buffers. So
Right.
even that alone might make your life a lot
Right. I'm just
faster and easier. I mean, this is
It's so fast
amazing
anyway.
for
Yeah,
mashup.
yeah, right.
It's awesome. Questions, comments, guys?
How fast does it run on the Chromebook?
The Chromebook.
So
So this is
you
going 1 frame per second?
Put it in the shader.
Okay.
You'll get 10 FPS.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
On
So
the-
I know you're running your big machine, but I just had to ask.
I know, this has been the big disappointment. The Chromebook has no good GPU. I mean, it just has the typical Intel GPU.
Well, you don't have the fancy Chromebook, you got the $250.
I have the fancy
You
Chromebook.
get the $250 one, right?
I both.
Well, you have the fancy- the new
all-
one's like $1,500, it's supposed to be all fancy, right?
That's the one, I had that one and I had the $300.
And it doesn't run fast? Ooh.
It doesn't have a GPU.
30
It has
days up,
Intel GPU.
send that thing back.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be fast.
It has LTE, it has always on internet connection, wherever I am.
I bet some Samsung WinRT thing would be faster than that, we'll see. I don't know what chips are in there, what's that?
I'll try it out.
Yeah, we're gonna try it out, we'll have to find out. Back there.
Yeah, did you get the elevation data from OpenStreetMaps too, or is that a different?
No, that was US data, G, topo, whatever.
GIS,
So,
yeah.
let's see if I can,
Is that,
that was,
is that the DEM data? Digital elevation model?
Yeah, DEM's a fat format, man, you got a
Yeah.
lot of ASCII.
I mean, all these formats.
there's this little surface that you just put in, minus 140, okay.
So you had to crank this bit by hand, right? to get the
No, I
elevation.
use auto hotkey to do it,
Auto hotkey, yeah.
to do it for me.
So
It's a
so
little
you're
bird.
ba- so
You
you're
get the little
basically
bird doing
screen
this.
scraping, basically screen scraping the elevation data off this.
Yeah, right, I'm just gonna show you how it works.
And then, did you write the code to turn the DEM data into the bitmaps? Or is that?
No, that's,
He's not using DEM data, he's using this, which is.
This,
this one, okay, okay, there it is, okay. I don't know, okay.
oh, and it gives you a bit.
Oh, that's an ocean, I think, I did it wrong, I did it wrong.
38 degrees north, 122.
What did I do?
38
Okay,
degrees.
okay,
Wait,
I
wait,
can talk in
wait,
this.
wait.
You're right.
Right.
I couldn't figure out the get put stuff to get into it, so I auto hotkey, which is a keyboard stuffer.
Love it. That's so old school. Other Q&A? By way of introduction, coming on 10 years ago now, I was giving a talk somewhere in San Francisco about earlier 3D on the web technology, namely X3D, which was an outgrowth of this earlier thing called VRML, which I personally created with a half a dozen other people or so. Back more years than I can count at this point, coming on 20 actually. And I was approached at the end of my talk by this fellow who said, what would be really cool is if you could take Unreal Engine game level content and see it in X3D, because then you could see it in a web browser. Wouldn't that be cool? And I said, God, that'd be awesome. He said, well, I just happen to have built that. And that fellow was Dave Arendash, and he and I have been fast buddies for that decade ever since. And Dave continues to soldier on doing all kinds of 3D stuff. Unity, he's a top Unity expert, as well as all kinds of things, WebGL and X3D and whatnot. So today, Dave's going to be sharing some of his latest forays into X3D and WebGL. So take it away, my friend.
Thank you. That was going to be basically what it was saying. Because I wouldn't be here today without this man and the work he did. By way of a survey, how many here have not heard of VRML? Or X3D?
One, two, three, four.
Okay, so VRML, Virtual Reality Markup Language, co-invented by Tony here, was the web's first standard for doing 3D. There were plenty of other people doing OBJ and 3DS and whatnot, but Tony said, let's do it on the web, right? And of course, back in 94, 95, hardware isn't what it is today, so it never really got a whole lot of traction, but it was an easy enough format, and almost everything that you could get, Max, Maya, Blender, a whole bunch of game tools, almost anything you can think of to read and write VRML at least. And any of those home architecture things, right? Better homes and gardens. So X3D was sort of a new breath of life into this, what, 02? Something like that?
2-ish.
Right, and the X, because kids love things with the X in it. Basically, it was because they had XMLized it, and of course brought it up to what was current at that time. It's having 10-year-old technology now, but still far better implementation. And this has also been quite around. So Tony and I also worked on an X3D exporter about 10 years ago for 3D Studio Max. Well, I'll get into that later, but the point being, these tools are kind of around. So what is X3DOM? X3DOM is basically putting X3D into a web page. Now, X3D and VRML are both declarative, right? So instead of coding something that draws a box, you just say, I got a box. Here's how big it is, and what's the color on it, and so forth. So you just say, I got a box, I got a sphere, I got this point list that defines, you know, a polyhedra structure of some sort of mesh, or stacks of medical data, or CAD data, or whatnot. It's all declared right there in the thing. Imagine now that gets embedded in a web page. And so X3DOM implements the X3D spec as such, with JavaScript and WebGL calls. And I say, but not all of it, because it doesn't do the whole spec. They're still building on it. They just added CAD support, somebody working on the medical stuff, and so on and so forth. And it also does not implement, if you're familiar with X3D and Vermal supported scripts and protos, right? So these are scripts that were embedded right inside the content that would give interactivity to it. And protos were a way to define and then reuse those things so you can make smart objects. These have been omitted so far from X3D, partly because it doesn't seem so necessary, and partly because it's a very hard problem. It doesn't seem that necessary now because it is JavaScript, and you can reach into this scene. If you say, I've got a box, you can reach in with standard JavaScript and say, and I'm going to change the color on it, or whatever. It's just scripted. It's just simply there. And this X3DOM effort, and the DOM part, of course, is the DOM tree, right? So not only can you declare it, as you can see in a second, like HTML, but you can create and manipulate it as you do with any DOM tree.
Point of order. Protos were actually created before the DOM. Protos predate DOM objects. Before there was a document object model where you could manipulate properties through JavaScript, we had that stuff in VRML in like 1995 or 96. So there's a good reason that protos don't need to be part of this now. I mean, there's a new technology that's come along in that intervening decade and a half.
Right.
The DOM.
Right.
That renders it absolutely relevant.
And the only
So
thing,
I don't think there's any need to ever do it.
the only reason people might want to do this, they don't want to modify their existing content. So here again, this is the oldest format. It's an ISO format, right? It's internationally standardized format. The first of its kind. I think Collada finally went ISO, but Collada is different, right? Collada not only is it 10 times close and bigger, doesn't support sound, doesn't support, you know, a runtime and such, and interactivity. Whereas X3D supports things like animation and interactivity. You can touch things. You can, you know, have all sorts of proximity sensing and whatnot in there. You know, the whole shoot match, a real scene. And this is why I saw this as a perfect way to implement a game engine. Not a really great game engine, but a game visualizer anyways, because it could suck that entire scene and reproduce it in a web page with the sound, with the lights, with the motion, with the interactivity, etc. And so I was actually able to use the Unreal Editor as an X3D content producing IDE. So why now? Why are we here? Right? It's a standard, and it's been around for a long time. So, like I say, it's been in a bunch of stuff, and it's more than just geometry. It's not just like Collada, which is pretty much just geometry and textures, right? It describes lights, sounds, animation, interactivity, all the good stuff. Collisions, right? So you can say what you're going to bump into and what you're not. And now the interactivity is like the mouse overs and clicks and stuff is handled by standard HTML style like mouse over event, right? So whereas the X3D spec defines mouse sensors and things like that, that's already built into HTML and it's been there from the beginning. So now you can use those same things, stuff you're already familiar with. You can use jQuery with this and it works just fine. You can embed files within files using what they call inlines. So, and I'll show you an example in just a second that is like the minimal thing, but just simply inlines on another file. And you can have these go as deep as you want. They're just URLs to other files. The tools already exist, right? And I say rusty as it may be because these X3D exporters have been in your tools for at least 10 years. And some are newer than others, and I'll show you a few. But they do produce stuff that loads. So in theory, anything that produces X3D is producing X3 DOM. The X3 DOM spec, such as it is a bit more strict than X3D's. It's, you know, the way quotes are handled and upper lower casing and a few other little tiny tweaks. But the X3 DOM parser is flexible enough to handle most of that. You'll find corner cases where it's just too broken, but by and large, if you can make X3D, you're already there. It is open source, even though it's handled by Fraunhofer. They put everything out in the open source. You can go get it. They have a minimized version for fast loading, but they've got the full, verbose, nicely indented stuff for debugging, and all sorts of bits in between. And it's got a console, and it's got a diagnostics panel, so that you can see your frame rates and vertex counts and things like that in there. This next bit, of course, is, you can tell how old this slide is. It's at least, 24 hours old, right? Because it'll run in IE via a flash wrapper, but I guess we don't care anymore.
Can you edit the slide?
I'll just take that one out. Yes, and it's backed by the geniuses at Fraunhofer. And they're pretty responsive. If you get into this and you find bugs or one feature is just ping them, and they're up there. There's a nice mailing list.
What's the license like?
Free, open. As far as I know, there's no.
But is it
There's open source.
GPL or
That I do not know.
LT?
That's important.
Yeah, that is important.
Because people, if you want to do something commercial with it, and if it's GPL, then you can't.
That is a good question.
You can. I mean, GPL doesn't preclude you doing commercial stuff. It just means that you've got to provide the source code.
True, so you
When you do it.
you can't go proprietary.
But if it's just a
It's
file,
prohibitive for a lot of people.
if it's just a file format, it's not really code.
Right.
Like
But the
the
licensing is
source
important.
license is like you're more like in Creative Commons.
But it's also the engine of loading, though. It's
Yes,
loading
yes,
parameters.
yes,
That's
yes,
the part,
yes.
right. Do you know offhand how big the minified library is, since we've already interrupted you?
I don't, but we can get to that.
Yeah, let's go take a look later, because that's the other sort of issue that I think
Right.
people might have in production if the library is too big.
Right, and like X3D spec itself, there's this core, right, that handles all your basic geometry, materials, light, sound, blah, blah, blah. And then there's add-on bits. So if you need CAD, if you need medical imaging, etc., those are sort of like extras, and you just simply include those JSs, in your header, and then there they are, right? So, and I must apologize for the boringness of this slide. I don't have PowerPoint, and this open office thing is a lot fussier than I had hoped it would. Other than be flying animation and 3D bits and all the other stuff I envisioned, but I had to toss all that. So it's just a boring me reading this list, right? So 3D Studio Max does have X3D export. It has verbal export from the beginning, and X3D export since 02 when Tony and I wrote that. And that particular code is kind of languished. I need to get it working again.
Camp probably doesn't even run in the new Maxes, right?
It won't run as is a DL. I have to rebuild the DLL, which means I have to get the latest, DLLs, their DLLs, and all that other stuff put together. And it's like a couple of days worth of screwage to get that working again. But fear not, because Instant Reality by Fraunhofer, right? They have their own X3D player, provides a whole bunch of tools, and one of them is a free exporter for 3D Studio Max. Maya has a plugin called Rawkey, written by an associate of ours. Beautiful plugin for that, very comprehensive. Blender has a native X3D exporter and importer, as it turns out, but Bit Management's is better. So if you go to the Bit Management site, they're one of the big players in X3D. And they have a bunch of tools. One of those is a free Blender plugin for that. I'll plug my Unreal exporter. It's basically, it was designed for Unreal, first Unreal from 1997. It does work with later versions, and I'll be getting it working with the UDK when I find some cycles. But in theory, you can assemble your scene in the Unreal IDE and then export it. You export it as T3D files and then run it through this little stupid pipeline I've got that spits out X3D. Bit management has an editor. It's almost like each of these is getting closer to Notepad as we go, right? X3D is basically an XML editor that will do syntax checking and all that stuff, and it's a great way to validate your X3D file. And then there's Notepad. I mean, you could literally just type this stuff and so forth, and a bunch of other stuff. Just little bits and pieces, and easy enough to write yourself when you go to the X3D org site and look at the samples and stuff. I mean, it's pretty simple syntax. If you wanted to write your own, I would say it's just slightly more cumbersome than writing in 3JS or something, because you're not writing in JSON, you're writing in XML. But these tools can help. And Fraunhofer has an online tool too. So if you have existing content or can get it, or can export it from whatever tool you like into, say, Vermal, they have an online converter, which unfortunately they've made it more cumbersome because I think they didn't want people using it as an inline service, right? So you have to kind of paste the code in and say convert and then copy the result out into your file. Because if it was just simply upload and download file, then people would be just running it all the time. So I think they throttled it that way. And a tip when authoring, keep it simple, stupid, because people will get in there with a model that's got mental ray this and all sorts of third-party plugins, and it looks fantastic when they render it, and then they wonder why it just looks like a box when you export it to some simple format, right? And that's because these things are handling basically your standard materials. Keep things as polygonalized and triangulated and stick to the standard shaders and standard whatnots, because otherwise you're going to overload this. Now X3DOM does support shaders, right? You can put your own shaders in there, but then you're going to kind of be hand coding that, because none of these tools right now is an IDE. Somebody's working on an X3D exporter from Unity that will support some of that. So keep your eyes open for that. But until then, you're going to get some pretty simple stuff. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is like the minimal file here. You got your HTML header, in which you include this URL to the x3dom.org CSS file, and the JavaScript file is, well, it's hard to read because it's a link. Anyways, it's just a link, so that's all you do. You can link directly. You're welcome to download and run it on locally or on your own server, but you can just hit the latest stuff right here. In your body, you then have an X3D tag. You can think of that as a canvas. Whether you want to show statistics, show the log, your width, height, etc. Inside is the scene, and so a scene, begin and end tag, and then inside that is your content, right? And if I just said box with, like an empty M tag, it would make a 1 meter white box right there, done. That's all you needed. Same thing with spheres and cylinders and whatnot. You have a bunch of defaults. In this case, I've used one of these inlines where you give it a URL to the actual X3D file that you want to load. So this can load arbitrarily complex stuff with just that not code. And like I say, it interoperates with the rest of HTML, HTML5, right? You can put stuff over it, like in the past, if you had a plugin running on your browser, you couldn't overlay divs or something like that. You can do that. Movies and GIFs and all that good stuff, right, is now available to the engine. So it's just there, right? Anything that you could do before, you can still do, but now it's all done declaratively. And your Ajax and JSON. CSS is fun to play with. You can reach into the scene, like I said, with JavaScript to do interaction and programming, whatever smarts you need to put into it. It handles the clicking. There's an onload callback for everything. All right, so if you wanted to make a progress bar, you can simply just monitor the downloads, and no scripts or protos, but
That on the web page.
you do that in the web page, right? It's all now just the JavaScript you've known and loved. You don't have to learn ECMAScript and blah, blah, blah. So here's a few quick examples. I'm sorry I don't have anything like jaw-dropping, but just sort of proof. Bring up Blender here. Right, so here's just 4 primitives in Blender. And then with this one, I use the export, bit management's exporter for Blender, and results to be seen. That's another one. Which one was that? Shapes. Is that it? It's not it. Now it's going to call me a liar. Right? Blender. Oh, why does it always happen on
And look at us, dude.
So at this point, you would see what you saw in Blender. It look a lot like that without this grid. So much for that. I have other examples, but I promise it works. All right, so here's Max, and we saw that this actually worked, right? Again, I just put some primitives in there, and in this case, I'm using the front offer instant exporter, right? X3D, very simple, and back in here. And there they are. Right? So what do you do? X3DOM comes with basic, sort of simple, some keys you can hit to navigate around. It's got this simple examine mode, but there is a set of APIs that let you change the navigation mode and other bits of bookkeeping and so forth. You can put in backgrounds, right? You can put in skyboxes. You can put in gradient backgrounds. Of course, with these tools, you can't put in the sounds and stuff, but lights, animation, and whatnot. I've got some more examples of that.
Yeah, don't you have like the Cho Factory or something? That was all done with this stuff, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't actually. Sorry. I did it in Blender, but then I imported it to Unity.
Oh, it was Unity.
So, and here's the Unreal sample, right? So this actually was a level I did in Unreal, the Unreal editor, about 10 years ago. And I didn't do anything to this model except import it in the inline. But there it is, sort of. So I didn't put any ground or anything in it, but that was it. I tried getting an actual Unreal map, but those are very complex and take a lot of time to load, and then the fan starts blowing, and they're not optimized at all, right? So my X3D exporter was not optimized for X3DOM, but if you go to the X3DOM home, there's plenty of good stuff. Ooh, Riftized it. Great. Let's see. So here's a cute little example, just to prove that it's got all that nice stuff in it. It comes with a standard shader that you can use if all you need is diffuse or bump or a few other things. You basically just say what your bump maps are and your light maps and whatnot, and it just does it. If you need something fancier than that, you can write your own shaders.
So they did a per pixel lighting on the scene? Nice.
So there you go. I mean, it's hierarchical. It's got animation. It's got dynamic lights. It's got shadows.
The cubes actually, can you solve them in there?
Um,
Well, no, I say that just because they're all, a bunch of Armour and X3D Rubik's Cubes actually work. You can actually
right.
manipulate them, not just look at them.
Right.
So it's possible you could just use this inline thing Dave's talking about to just bring it into the scene if someone already wrote that code.
Right. Right. It supports fog. Huge meshes. Right. So normally you can only have 65,000 indices per mesh, but this will automatically, if your meshes are larger, will automatically split that. So you don't have to do so much work yourself. And they have various ways of compressing data. They actually have a way to compress vertex data into a bitmap and then download the bitmap. So as you were saying, right, bitmaps are easy and they're cached and they're all the good stuff, right? So they have a tool for doing that. So you give it, the geometry gives you back like PNG files that look like white noise, but you know they load fast.
And that's mesh data encoded in the PNGs? Sweet.
And I'm not sure about this Wi-Fi connection.
Should be 5 megabits down, but you never know. We can wait a minute and do a little Q&A while this is going on.
Right. Well, and then I'll put in the plug for the Web3D Consortium, right, which is the standards carrier for this. This is the, did you found that, or?
I did.
Yeah, so.
Many more years ago than I care to
Right.
share.
So
with
they
you.
have all sorts of working groups and ways to get involved if you're interested. The specs are up here and lots of examples and samples and news and all the good stuff. So X3D and Verbal, I mean, they don't call it Verbal anymore, but through X3D it's still alive and well, and it's still, and it's the Cronus group, I believe, is taking it under its wing, is that right?
I don't know about that. Taking the Web3D consortium.
They work on things together, but
There's
I don't know if I'd
definitely
say.
a collaboration.
Yeah, there's
but
like MOU and whatnot.
Okay,
Collaboration,
yeah,
different elements.
right.
I wouldn't.
Again,
No, I
so,
haven't really done anything. Sweet. It's nice.
yeah, so this is, I don't know, a couple 100,000 vertices, I guess it's a laser scan.
Yeah.
And well, we're not going to go through all of these here because there's tons of them. But yeah, just Google X3 DOM, and the first thing that comes up is basically this page. You can, yeah, there's another salient feature, right? This is back from Armour. You can ID and then use something. So you define it once, and then you can just instance it later by using its ID, which was def, right? It used to be def use. Now it's just reuse the ID. Although it still supports def and use, that it's backwards compatible. You can have multiple viewports, you can have layering, like 2 and 3D layering, so your HUDs can all just be whatever you like it to be in HTML or whatnot. It does some mesh, some text things. There's a CAD example. I'm not sure if this is going to work on this computer. I've actually had some issues with this machine with WebGL because the NVIDIA driver is not supporting it well. So wow, that's exciting. Well, apparently that's a cat thing,
That's the best washer I've ever seen.
isn't it?
Can, donut, was it?
It's actually a pretty interesting augmented reality application up there as well. You can use the FLAR toolkit to do some very basic augmented reality with the fiduciary marker stuff using WebGL and whatnot.
Nice.
So that's nice.
So Dave, can we get into some Q&A here?
Yeah, sure.
So, I'm going to be crapping on my babies here in a sense by asking these kind of questions, but what I'm seeing, I mean, I know you didn't have that time to do the high production value demo stuff, right? But even with the video textures and the large models, I'm kind of seeing stuff that I see in Mr. Duke's samples, right? So when I look at this, and oh, it's sweet. It's a nice one. Do we have the Bolero music that plays along with it? That was perfect. I see this stuff and I have to ask, not knowing the background to this, what's different? Why would I care about this? It looks like another model format.
Right.
Looks like stuff I've seen in the Mr. Duke demo, so what's the big deal? Why did you take me to the Fraunhofer researchy looking page that I don't understand because it's
Right.
an ugly web page made by
Well,
engineers.
right, so
So what's the deal?
the salient point here is that if you want to get into, WebGL, instead of learning JavaScript and learning to code up, right, JavaScript scenes, it's already been done, right? So the standard already exists, and the tools, by and large, already exist.
A little out of date, but
A little out of date, we're working on it, right? So like I said, it's still alive and well. There are people who are actively having on their to-do list, right, to fix this stuff. And they know that the competition's out there, seeing JS and JS and whatnot is, gaining popularity. We've been working on this a long time. We don't want to see it die. So, plus all that content's out there. I mean, you can Google free models, right? Go look on, or just Google free 3D models. You're going to find VRML and X3D out there. And most of these places I've seen where you can go buy models, right? You can download it as Maya, Max, maybe Blender, but definitely VRML. Sometimes X3D per se. And like I said, VRML, it's just a conversion away. You can load it into almost any tool and then export from almost any tool. Or you can run it from Fraunhofer's online tool. So the tools are kind of already there. And as far as I know, nobody has an authoring tool per se for WebGL. Right?
that still does not exist in any good way.
Right, but you've got Max,
know that's
you've got
gonna happen,
Maya, you've got Blender, and you've got other tools that can convert between them. So there's a path to get there.
Now, it's funny, how many people were at our last meetup where we talked about tools and output? Most of the people in the room, right? So, the thinking there is there's slightly more recent set of tools around Collada, which is a quite similar format in terms of the types of content it has. It has the animations, has the links, does not have the sounds, does not have the collisions per se, there's a physics spec, but that's a different animal. So it's slightly different feature set, but also seems to be in the same position where the tools are a little bit out of date, but there's still, either of these, X3D or Collada, seems to be a more hopeful format and path than what's happening right now out there in Doob land, I'll call it, or CJS land, which is output OBJ files, and then hand code the animations, hand code your scene script, hand code your lighting, done by geeks, done by technical directors, all good for making the hardcore stuff, not good for making simple page graphics. So it seems like there is a need. It would be nice, that's sweet. It'd be nice if there were, newer upgrades to these tools. If there was some professional seeming, like sort of commercial oriented X3D pipeline happening, or Collada for that matter. So I don't know, maybe the GLTF effort will shake some of this stuff out. But I think it's interesting because the benefits to what I'm seeing here aren't apparent, only because the end result looks like whatever has already been done as the 3JS demos.
Right.
So the subtle point is, I think, really the fact that you don't have to write these 7 pages of JavaScript code to get that effect. Someone else has figured that out for you. So am I getting that right?
Essentially, well, I guess the point is it's like this model here, this RX-7 was just an export the way you'd export anything. And even though we have a 3JS sort of exporter for Max, you don't have it for Blender and Maya and all that. This was
JS has got a pretty
just
good
an
exporter.
Well, Blender's got a converter out of Python, yeah. Yeah,
Does it?
but it sort of doesn't, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
okay. I mean, the
Well,
biggest
that's
problem
what
with 3JS is, again, that's not really an established format. They sort of have some format, but it's been hacked over time, and it's not a thorough and disciplined approach to doing file format stuff. Iker wants to chime in. Go ahead.
No, I mean, the biggest, the point for me, maybe even coming from the gaming industry, is that we need. I don't care that much about the technology. Everything is out there, but we need validation with some products that are out there. I mean, I really think that there are tools out there. Demos are cool, but we need some kind of final. I don't know if it's going to be something more related to business industry or maybe gaming industry, but I mean, these kind of things have happened for quite a long time out there, and we still don't see any use, like real use in the real world use. We get excited because we love these kind of things, but we need that kind of application. We need a game, or we need an application that is going to show that the 3D in the web is definitely there, VRML, I used it in the past, and it looked very promising, but it didn't make it. So, I don't know, I mean, more than fighting with VAS or just let's just go for one and do something professional, and show that it's viable to do commercial products and make some money with it.
That's a great point. I think we're seeing that happen all around. So I agree that that's really what a group like ours has to be focused on more than anything. That being said, it ain't going to get done unless people build some tools to actually make it happen. But now the details of what those tools are, I agree. Really, at the end of the day, it only matters to us geeks, right? Really only matters to the people in this room and people like us. But they still have to be there, right? I mean, the situation right now is people are just solving the same pipeline problems over and over again. I mean, this is the axe I grinded at the last, or ground at the last meetup, so I don't have to get into it again. But I'd at least like to see that happen. And so I think where Dave's coming from is, there we go, that's X3D content, right?
Yes.
Is that, we solved a lot of these kind of pipeline problems a couple of generations back, and there's some existing content out there that we can lean on to kind of get going for web devs or Theos of the world who want to mash things up. I mean, not everyone's going to be writing a damn game engine for every project, right? I mean, this is about getting this into the hands of web developers who don't necessarily want to learn GLSL details, at least not on their first project, maybe a year down the road after they've built something basic, right?
And it's happening with HTML5. There are more game engines than games are, or there are more tools sometimes, or engines, or because we get excited about it, but we need the products and everything.
I don't think there's any.
I mean, I don't know if someone knows anything about Unity whenever I'm pretty sure that they're close to.
About who?
Unity?
Yeah.
Unity exported to WebGL somehow, or?
It's been on a talk for a couple of years, I haven't seen anything yet. What's it?
They have J3D, it's like this, I mean, it's, you have to do a lot of work to get it to work, but it's possible.
Well, Remy, who was at our last meetup, and unfortunately, well, fortunately for him, he's in Paris. Unfortunately for us, he's not here right now. He would have been presenting today. And he's got a pretty good Unity exporter that goes out to Collada. Now we're then sucking in GLTF that would get your Unity game levels, like Dave's Unreal tool, but for Unity, that takes your level data and gets it into a web page through this path. So that's coming.
When they dropped the Flash support, I mean, they announced that they were really committed to the web, so I already think that they're working with this one-click support or something. That would make a huge difference.
I'm a big fan of David Helgeson and Unity. I'll go on record on video. I'm going to say it right now. I'll believe it when I see it. I've been hearing it for 2 years. When's it going to happen? I mean, they have some technical problems to solve to get it to work. Unity applications are built in Mono, largely built in C#, mostly not built in JavaScript. A shitload of issues to deal with technically. I mean, getting the level data is one thing, but it's a huge investment in the game development that's got to do with the Mono code that's been written, right? And the shader code that's been written. Translating it's not necessarily here, you have to do it by hand. So there's some technical hurdles. I think mostly though it's probably a business focused thing where it's like, okay, so if they went and did that tomorrow, is that going to sell them a lot more seats? It's going to get them in-app purchase, it's going to give them some new thing? Maybe not, so maybe that's why they're not motivated right
When
now.
you were developing a game, the rendering it's an important thing, but it's not the biggest thing. So I mean everything surrounding it, and the browser doesn't allow you to access some of those features, and I reckon that's related to for sure, because it makes a lot of sense. You get access to a lot of things when you are programming natively that you don't have.
Right, and same for if you're programming for the web, you get access to different stuff. And so if you could use Unity as your scene creation tool, because you got people who know how to do that, they get their stuff in from Maya, they do some more layout, they add some more properties, they add interactive behaviors. The more you can convert that out to WebGL, you don't even need it to be one button. If somebody's got some good exporters, I think that would be enough. We see some pretty cool game content. Then it gets back to what you're saying, Eager, I think, which is, why are people doing that? And what are the reasons? Did they come up with some new great game they were building? That's the only reason to be doing that stuff, right? Anyway, it would be a great day if Unity had one button export. I'm with you on that, but I'm skeptical.
Right. Well, a couple of thoughts on that, if I may. Unity is used for more than just games. In fact, I've written one game with it, and I've got dozens and dozens of projects. So this is one example. This is something I actually did with X3D. Right now it's running in Contact, but there is hope that we will get it in X3 DOM. Why? Because
So
all
that's
these
a
assets.
plugin, just to be clear, that's a plugin rendering that.
Yeah, but all these assets are in X3 DOM, right, in X3D, and we won't have to touch them, right? So thousands of these models, we don't have to convert, we don't have to process in any way, they'll just simply work. And actually, this was the selling point, right, when this guy said, you know, I want to have this done, but I want it done in such a way that if the underlying technology changes, all my assets are reusable.
Right.
There's only one durable way to do that. And so, I mean, that's a business case, it's not a game. This is the type of thing that I could definitely do with the Unity engine, you know, assemble a scene like this and be an export, do stuff
Don't
like
get me wrong,
this.
I mean, I work with a lot of augmented reality, virtual reality companies like in Spain, and they use Unity for the type of stuff. Of course, I mean, there is a market for that, but
Right,
we have to admit that Unity mainly is for gaming, mainly. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it's only for that.
right.
And the biggest revenue is coming out of gaming.
Right.
That's what I really think that what I say about validation, it's market validation.
Right.
And that is very important, because if we can get excited about this, we need to work on this, and we have to make a life out of it, so.
Right.
I agree, but let's not forget that we're in a bit of a bubble here too. We're in a bubble that thinks that monetizing games, and you know, with all due respect to the company who's employing me right now, even, thinks that's the only way to make money in this world. But when you have a technology for doing visualization across the board, and there is no friction to getting it into everybody's hands, there's literally no limit to the kind of business applications that have been built. They used to be built on high-end custom hardware that people used to pay a lot for. And it's, you know, this kind of visualization stuff could be education. There's, you know, we haven't even touched it yet, really. So, and you know, we're not here to predict that, and we don't need to. That's the good thing. Now, there's the cost, the barrier to entry to get started with this stuff. There's an education barrier, right? There's people learning some 3D development. There's a tools barrier that we're trying to work our way through. But it's next to zero to get going with this stuff. And it's never been that way. And that's the exciting thing. And the browser guys have built it in.
Positive of that.
Case in point. Yeah. So
Actually,
I
you
understand
know,
what you're saying, but we also need to keep a broad perspective on this. My opinion.
have you ever seen shift control.dk? If you type that in, it has a lot of really pretty unique things done in Unity. And they're all, I mean, if you're familiar with like processing or open frameworks, it's basically generative art, but it's really cool stuff. So you can go /tag, I think, Unity. Let me see here. Or just scroll down. It's full of examples.
A quick point on the game engines in the browser, right? Unreal Engine has been ported to Firefox, right, using that JSASM thing.
Everyone's seen that, right?
Yes.
Right, and it looks awesome, and it runs fast, and it's all the good stuff. And when I talked to Unity about doing this type of thing, they said one of their concerns was you're basically putting your game engine code out, you know, in the clear, and they're not sure that they want to give away their secret sauce like that, you know. But so I don't know. My guess is
And that's a big epic in a big game, so we don't know how that one's going to shake out, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, that was a game changer when Epic did that, because they're like, wow, they got their butt out in the wind now, so maybe Unity follows suit, or Crisis or somebody.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know. It's an ever-changing world.
I don't know, like,
Okay, time for one more question. I want to
Yeah, I just wanna
make sure
ask
we have
you-
enough time to talk to Frank today, too.
Okay,
So,
right. Just, can I ask?
Yeah.
Okay. What about doing mashups and stuff in real time? How can I get access to individual objects in real time?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but those inlines, right? If you've ever played with X3D or Thermal, if you loaded an inline, you were kind of like excluded from reaching into that inline. But with this, you could reach into any part of the scene, no matter where, and get at it. So I had
Change materials or
Change-
morph?
Yeah, all that
Okay.
stuff.
I had another demo.
Well, we had
and
it
I-
all figured out in 1997.
Yeah.
It took the world this long to catch up
Yeah.
with. Seriously, that stuff was all in the spec back then.
I had another live demo that I'll talk about just briefly. It was basically a back end, right? Using a web page to define your scene, and it would drive X3D content in both Unity, Contact, and X3 DOM, so that they all perform the exact same operations, right? They're all basically just pinging a database saying, you got anything new? And it would say, yeah, you need to change the color on this sphere that's over here, or change the position or whatever. And so everybody could be interacting on any of these 3 clients
Whatever
at the
one they
same
wanted,
time.
right.
Whatever they wanted, and the scene was updating in real time, and that was all, and it worked great in X3 DOM. And we could only do that because we could reach into that scene and attach to any part of it. You can change the shape of meshes, you can, I mean, literally anything you want. And it happens immediately, you don't have to like hit an apply function, right? You just say, this is red, and it turns red. So it's very easy to use.
Okay, guys, I want to just keep going. I mean, people can feel free to, grab food, do bio breaks, whatever. But I want to move to kind of roundtable mode here. But as a centerpiece to that, I would really like it if Frank could come and share with us a little bit. Do you have an HDMI cable?
I have DisplayPort.
Or you have display? I've got an adapter right here.
So, hi, I'm Frank Olivier. I'm some guy who works on the IE team, and I'm with your WebGL Meetup. We just announced WebGL support today in IE 11. We're super aggressive with updating people to the newest version of IE, so at some point in the near future when we ship, if you have IE, you have WebGL running in there. I'm going to show like a random collection of stuff that I presented today to our Bold conference attendees. The way I like to do things is if you have a question, just like jump in and we'll just do a roundtable discussion and kick it off that way. Right? Excellent. So I can give a little bit of background about myself. I've been working on IE hardware acceleration since IE 9. We started off rendering a bunch of HTML5 content to the GPU, and then we started, looking around for more stuff that connects to the GPU. So SVG canvas, SVG filters, a bunch of other stuff, and eventually WebGL. I get this question kind of sort of sometimes. IE is a DirectX application. We talk to the DirectX stack in Windows. We talk to the latest DirectX 11 runtime. Sorry, I'm sitting in front of the projector, but we take WebGL in from the web page, and we just translate it all transparently for you, and you don't have to worry about all the DirectX details underneath the covers. We don't require you to have an OpenGL driver on the machine. We just run on the latest DirectX drivers that you have. So, you don't have to worry about anything DirectX. We'll take care of all that for you. We've been talking to a bunch of people that do WebGL out there in larger companies. We have some people at Microsoft also working on some WebGL projects. One that I want to show you guys is our photosynth team in Microsoft Research. They have this really cool web service where you upload a bunch of photos. I think this is 80 photos of the cast in Edinburgh. And they just kind of interpolate, from the bunch of photos, how to mesh them all together, and they kind of sort of, with some clever vertex shaders, just kind of blend them all together. So there's the castle. I just saved you, I think, 12 euros to get in there. That is Mount St. Helens. One of the programmers who works on the project flew around it and took 40 photos, and they just stitched it all together. And all the smarts is on a big, Windows Azure cloud service that blends all the stuff together. It takes about 12 minutes to blend, all these photos. But then afterwards, we use WebGL to display this on the client side. This isn't live yet. This will go live in about a month from now, I think. And yeah, there you go. This is 40 photos of Mount St. Helens, and they just stitches it all together.
So how does this come down? Is it a bunch of PNGs or something?
A bunch of JPEGs and a little path that it does. Right. And I forget how to do it, but there's actually a little mode in here if I haven't broken it. This is all pre-release code, so there's a little mode in here that I'm not going to show you very well now, but it basically there's a little camera.
You can pre-navigate.
In some of them, yeah. So there's 4 different ways to generate these things. One of them is kind of like a rotation thing like this. You can kind of sort of get a nice map view of where you're on the mountain. But there's other ones where the Edinburgh one was like a walkthrough where we kind of show you how to walk through a building. And then there's a panorama one that is inside out and outside in. So this is the clever scientists that work on this thing. And they're out in a little electric boat in Lake Union. If you're ever in Seattle, you want to go out on the water, if it's a nice summer day, there's a great company that rents out electric boats so you can ride around, go see all the houseboats in Seattle. There's also now a company that rents out hot tub boats, hot tub in a boat. So, you know, if you want to spend more, you can do that too. But again, this is, I don't know, a couple of photos and it just stitches together, you know,
So where's
seamlessly.
this?
This is in Seattle. This is, if it does another half rotation, you'll see the Sleepless in Seattle house in the background, somewhere on there.
Oh,
It's on a lake, yeah. So this is the kind of stuff that, you know, we're talking to a bunch of people that do WebGL inside of Microsoft, outside of Microsoft. You guys all know WebGL is a gigantically awesome API for doing stuff you just could not do before in the web platform. And
Why did it take so long for Microsoft to understand this?
oh, that's a great question.
I know there were security issues.
So this is all the stuff we do for security. So after all this, we felt that it was a good thing to do. Honestly, you know, everybody who works in the IE team is, we all love web platform, otherwise it
You
would
were
work in a
all
web
for it.
browser.
It was other people.
Working in the IE team, you fix a huge number of security bugs, and we have a huge amount of attacks, a huge amount of bugs we fix every month. So, and some of the attacks we see are astoundingly clever.
Yeah.
So, you know, the attack surface behind WebGL is gigantic. The number of APIs you have in WebGL is gigantic. The amount of low-level stuff in the OS you expose is gigantic. So we were so fully for it, but it took quite a long amount of time of due diligence to convince everybody, including ourselves, to do all this stuff. And to be honest, yesterday I got thrown out of the Apple Store for, I was running some test code that I have on Chrome and on after enabling WebGL. You can still lock up Safari and Chrome and, you know, kill the user session. But if you screw up, either screw up your WebGL code or maliciously do it. Well, there's crashing the browser, and then there's crashing every single app on the system, and, you know, crashing the window manager. So that we think we've solved all these problems on the IE side. We're fairly confident we've done it. We have an $11,000 bug bounty, I think, now. I don't write the checks, so I don't know. But
we just announced that, yeah.
Yeah, we just announced that a week ago. So we're pretty confident we solved this thing. I think, you know, we're the last people, second last people to show up with the WebGL turned on by default. But we are confident we did all the due diligence here to run this stuff. It's not universally as safe as an IE across the whole web platform, but we really want to see this solved everywhere. We want WebGL to go more mainstream, but there is also this, as you enable it, as people...
We need the game that Theo was talking about. We need the killer app.
Definitely, yes, and that's coming along as well. We have one of the nice things about
Photosynth looks good.
Yeah. One of the nice things about working at Microsoft is that we have a gigantic index of the entire web. We put this data center down in Oregon next to a power station, and it shows us, you know, of all the web technologies out there, how they grow over time. So you can see, you can do a little chart of how much WebGL is on the web, you know, over time, and you can see it's at this inflection point where it's just going up, and now is a good time to do it. That's why we spend a huge amount of time and effort in doing WebGL and IE. We want to drive the web platform forward. We took a huge bet on the web platform. We're talking to other companies as well about, there are still some security issues in WebGL. We think we've solved most of them, all of them. But there's still work to be done elsewhere in the ecosystem. But it is solvable. I think we solved it on the IE side. I can go through all these security mitigations, but unless you're super interested in this stuff, I can just, you know, you can skip it.
So, quick question, what extensions are you guys supporting?
So currently in the preview, none. Sorry about that, it's a preview. We are working on a bunch of them. Which ones would you like? We're all about feedback in the IE team, so tell us which ones you want. You have to speak up now, or...
Multiple render targets continually is number one.
Really?
Number one, that's based on the sample group I've seen over the last year.
Okay.
On the mailing lists from our meetups.
Okay. That's good. That's a good one.
Feature. Chrome is finally starting to run.
Floating point textures was number two.
Yes.
Yeah, floating point textures have been around for a while, but multiple render targets is available, I think, on Mac in Chrome, but not on Windows. They actually just switch Angle over to DirectX 11.
Right.
So now that's starting to land, and the newer thing that just landed, it's behind the flag in Chrome, is the instanced arrays. So
yes.
the Angle instance arrays, you can get that in Canary.
Yes. Yep.
So those are fun things.
Yes.
Because I mean, the main performance bottleneck is going through all the bullshit that WebGL requires you to do.
Yes.
So anything that makes it so you make less calls into WebGL means you can do more fun stuff.
Yep. No, on the Silicon side, that's brand new. I think from the Apple keynote, they just announced that they're doing their iOS 7 instancing extensions. They call it something else, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one of the other things we've seen in WebGL as well. Are people familiar with WebGLstats.com?
Yes.
There's a great website that kind of shows you, all the various levels of GPUs out there. We have a similar data on the Windows side. We have a telemetry service inside of IE. The average GPU out there that people run on a tablet or phone or something is much less capable than what we see the average WebGL page doing. So people use a bunch of extensions, or they use like very complex shaders, and that's great. You have a very cool WebGL page, but there's this percentage of sites of devices out there that can't run it.
I mean, OpenGL ES2 is that's DirectX 9.
Yeah.
Even.
Yep. Oh yeah. But then with the extensions, you kind of bump up, here and there into DX10. Yep.
Some things like Vertex Array Objects you can just do without.
Yep.
Instancing, probably not, but yeah, those sort of things. Just because, like I said, your biggest performance drain is going to be calling WebGL.
Oh yeah. Yep. We have somebody working on floating point textures right now, so I don't think that's in yet on the build that we have up in Seattle, but that should be coming along.
Relatively trivial.
Yeah, yes. It's WebGL is tricky. I mean, one of our, if you run our preview, the thing we focused on more than anything else is security, because we're just, after so many years of bad press, we're just beyond paranoid about security.
WebKit and Blink, they have so many layers of bullshit you have to go through before you even get OpenGL. No. So that's all security related.
Yep. Yeah, we have a similar thing. I mean, there's a nice juicy attack vector behind WebGL, because you're just giving your shaders over to the GPU, and we have a bit of a different implementation from other vendors. We do lots more translation. We take your GLSL and do the AST tree and completely reconstruct it into HLSL. So
that's what Angle does.
I can go through the slide deck afterwards if you like.
I'm sure nobody
yes.
other than you and me works in
Yes. Yes, we.
Are you planning to open source that? Because it would be,
no.
Because it would be great technology for even like native developers to port to Windows.
Yes, no, exactly. There's some interest in that. I mean, at least from the IE side, we don't care what the language is on the web stack above us. We might have the GLSL, HLSL translator thing and built into the OS at some point. I don't know. That's a part of the decision for the future.
Actually,
but it's doable.
As there were requests, one of the requests would be that. I mean, it's more related to like web technologies, but more like for native.
Yep.
If I could just write OpenGL and translate it as fast as you already have that work with. Yeah, I know Angle is there, but I mean,
yep.
I'm pretty sure that Microsoft is doing a great job there.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of differences between what we do and what Angle does. I mean, both of us take WebGL, convert it into DirectX, but I don't really have no idea what their internals are. I'm not allowed to look at open source projects. But for example, one of the big differences we've seen is they use the DirectX 9 runtime. We use DirectX 11, which is vastly newer. DirectX 9 is XP, Vista era, and we were kind of in a hurry when we finished up Vista. So,
to be fair, they just landed the DirectX 11.
Yes, but it's not actually shipping anywhere.
We've actually waited for like a couple of years for this.
Yep.
Are your release cycles going to increase?
Yes. So we're very, very, very aggressive now in pushing out new versions of IE. We have auto updates set up through Windows Update, and we have a small little trial period. So we release a new version of IE, people can download it, and then in about a week or two, we flip the switch per country and just pave the machines onto the next version. So the experience is you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, you have the next version of IE. There's no UI, there's no balloon, there's no bubble, you just have the next version of IE. We've thrown the switch per country usually because of tax days and Christmas shopping, whatever shopping seasons. So there's a whole big team and floor in charge of like who gets IE 10 exactly when, which morning. But we flip the switch, and Windows Update is fantastic at just doing stuff every second Tuesday. I forget the stats, but every second Tuesday is when all the other patches for Windows go out, and there's some number that Akamai told us about where some percentage of the internet traffic is just Microsoft patches on that day. So
This is all awesome.
thanks.
So, are you going to do APIs on top of WebGL? So, do you see Microsoft doing their version of 3JS and CJS?
That's one of the other interesting things is I ran a query on the index we have of the web, and of all the WebGL sites out there, half of them roughly use 3JS, and they're a pretty even distribution of 3JS versions. 3JS is a fantastic library. I don't think we want to wade in there and bring another library to the table.
Because I feel that would really muddy the space, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we want to do something.
Wouldn't help the community at all.
Exactly. When you get to, we've looked at a bunch of different specs and frameworks on the web. When you get a web technology that has a framework that has 50% usage, that pretty much tells you that at least for a big chunk of scenarios, the problem's been solved, right? You coming along with a new product, like you say, you muddy the waters. There are some bugs we discovered in 3JS in version 58 that we do want to fix, so we'll do some pull requests on 3JS. But that's going to be the extent of our involvement. We do focus a lot on running 3JS content. We've got a gigantic list of all of the WebGL content on the web, and I have a bunch of people in my team who just do nothing but reduce 3JS websites, reduce WebGL websites, figure out why the shader failed, figure out what the shader label is that we should pipe through to our translator. So we're on a certain level, this is a compatibility project for us. We want to make sure that we get as much content on the web running through IE.
So will that mean that you'll be part of Kronos and help develop 1.2 spec and stuff like that?
So that answer involves more than just that's a longer answer.
It's above his pay grade.
Yeah, right.
Well,
yeah.
there's lawyers involved in that answer.
Yeah.
There's the very, 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 very short answer is that there's a lot of patents in the 3D space.
It's a lot of
patents in the 3D space.
Right, yeah.
So when you have a 3D API and you're drawing a Santa's body and there's all kinds of paperwork you sign, it gets very tricky. I can give you a much longer answer, but I get it. But we do want to solve the whole problem. We do want to move forward with pushing the web platform everywhere, including in the WebGL space.
I wanted to follow up on so okay, it's good that you're not going to try and compete against 3GS and others. But what about some of your existing 3D web technologies? Silverlight 5, I mean, do you see any predictions on that?
Good question. I'm not on the Silverlight team. I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, they're like a whole half a mile away from where I work, so I honestly have no idea. That's about as honest an answer as I can give you.
And then other things like other kernel products like OpenCL, which is sort of a compute theory.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've played with it a tiny bit in my spare time. I think at this point in time we're focusing on WebGL because that's where the immediate need is. I don't really know what the plans are for OpenCL in the future. I'm curious as to why you want to. What's your need for OpenCL? It's really cool stuff. I do agree with you.
I think I think we're all going to be doing a lot more parallel programming.
Oh yeah.
Right. And just be able to do it in a web browser effectively. I mean, it's a solution. It's probably not going to be the end.
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean,
but nevertheless, it's on the same sort of level and sort of sibling to WebGL.
And many of the people use both.
Yeah.
Well, there's some issues about using both together. It doesn't work as advertised, but that's a whole nother issue.
We should have a chat afterwards.
Or they don't even, they have their own compute stuff. It's, I don't really see OpenCL as being viable, and it's WebCL even less so because now you're accessing everything and running C code.
Yeah.
What's
It's
wrong with
not
that?
going to happen.
It gets much trickier because the average website, the first thing we assume in IE is that when we see anything off the wire, it is malicious. You just, you know, that's where the conversation starts. So running even more stuff on the GPU in a bigger sandbox gets really, really crazy, complicated really quickly.
So you don't realize this, but you have an opportunity at Microsoft, especially with this X3 DOM stuff. And why is that? Because a few years ago, Microsoft bought a company out called Divity, which Tony is also very familiar with. Tony and I and David all work there. And one of the products you guys own now is an X3D editor. And so that's been shelved and collecting dust all this time. That could be revived, tweaked just a little bit. You could be pushing X3 DOM content out of a Microsoft product and own that space.
X3 DOM is one of the frameworks we look at because there's still a need for a DOM-based approach to 3D. Some of the conversations we had in the past decade about 3D on the web were kind of interesting because people come to 3D on the web with a very different mindset. Some people want, you know, just the low level GPU aspect of it. Some people want like a 3D DOM, like a 3D DOM, and having, I think WebGL is kind of a good intermediary, a good solution that kind of ticks all the boxes, right? Your frameworks that all the way up and down do everything that you need to do, and including, like you said, like in the products that create content.
It's my contention that there's plenty of people out there who'd rather work in markup than JSON and JavaScript. It would be really nice.
Well, and I'd like to see
if there was some markup.
I'd like to see Visual Studio back on the market. This was just a great program. You guys have any dreams of making like WebDX?
No, because we want to be interoperable, right? So there's really no point to anybody unilaterally doing anything on the web. That's not really what the web is about. So for the first time ever in the history of the computing industry, you have one runtime, the web platform, that runs code that anybody can write, right? That's, you know, you don't have to go pay for tooling. And it runs in 3, 4, 5 different vendors' products. And it runs pretty well. You know, it's the most successful open runtime ever. So coming along with something that's, you know, buy this specific thing for this much dollars, you know, this doesn't seem like it solves the problem that really is worth solving. So there's no real non-interoperable features that'll get green-lighted anywhere.
It's not where the action is anymore. All the business is on the server anyway. It's people managing the data. Right. Boring over the client. It's all news, right?
Yeah. Changing gears slightly, this is a little thing that I showed this afternoon. This is a little photo editor. I find this is the easiest way to explain what WebGL can do, because a lot of people start off with, oh, you're doing WebGL, 3D on the web, right? Show me something, show me somebody walking inside a building, right? Show me 3D spinning objects. And I like this because this is a little photo editor. It's like a little warp thing. You can do a little manipulation there, and kind of change the facial expressions there. This is actually a rewrite of
Kai's Power Tools.
Exactly. I actually wrote this, the first version of this, 15 years ago. I wrote this, I saved up for a huge amount of time and bought a quad-core machine and wrote a little app that renders across 4 cores on BOS. Anybody remember BOS? Way back? Yeah. Yes. Great OS, but exactly, yeah. And I remember being amazed that I could like manipulate like 200 by 200 pixels on the screen, right? And if you told me like 15 years ago you'd be doing the same thing across like hundreds of cores on a web page, I'd be like, no, come on. So yeah, so this is what this does. It's very easy to explain kind of the core concept of WebGL. I'm sure you guys all know them, but I can show people, hey, this thing, if you're painting a 3D thing, it's really just a bunch of triangles, and you upload uniforms like global variables on the GPU.
It's already up?
Yeah, this is a little test drive. IE
test drive.
Yeah, if you Google IE test drive, you can get to it. So yeah, I mean, that's the easiest way I found to explain to people, like, this is how stuff works. It's like,
So you're supposed to say ding.
whichever one you like. So yeah,
It's all the same.
it's all the same. As long as it gets you to my page, I'm happy. So yeah, so that's the easiest thing to do. You know, it just shows you what the uniforms do. You know, it gets across the point that, you know, the only thing that I'm doing as I'm manipulating the I think it's 1 megapixel image here. You know, all the stuff is running on the GPU. You know, it's a great way to explain to people, like, you know, this is what the stuff does. I found that if I explain WebGL to people, and I start with, like, you know, there's this, you know, vectors and this matrix and this rotation and model view, and it's just, you know, it kind of breaks
Some
down.
people were doing like shaders on videos, on HTML5 videos.
And they're really cool. Yeah, I've seen those demos.
Yeah.
They're cool too, but it's kind of sort of like, you know, here's this web platform feature, and this is, you know, I just kind of, yeah. So I find this most useful in explaining WebGL to a bunch of people. But yeah, obviously we run, you know, every other kind of WebGL out there. Like I said, we have a gigantic list of WebGL stuff on the web. We find more every day. It's amazing since we started building WebGL how much more stuff is coming out that uses WebGL. And we just keep on, you know, adding things to a compat list that we have, and we just make sure we run them. So
Cool.
That's it. That's WebGL and IE. We're super excited to be part of the WebGL community. We want to push the web platform forward. Thanks very much. Yeah, happy to be here.
And the first release is going to be, what's the release schedule? What can you talk about?
So we have a preview out right now. So you can Google or Bing for something that says IE11 preview, and then you can get to the download page. Then I don't know.
And that's running on Windows 8 or
That's running on Windows 8.1 right now. So you have to download the entire OS image, which takes a while. Or it could be on BitTorrent at some point, but get the official ISO. And you can install that, or actually if you have a Windows 8 machine, you can install it through the store as like a preview thing. And then, of course, we'll also be more aggressive in pushing out other versions updating other versions of IE to the newest version.
And what's your kind of minimum OS support? Is it going to be 7 or 8?
So 7 as well, but you didn't hear that from me.
Good.
Or you didn't tweet that right now.
No, I wouldn't.
Yes, please. We're very, I mean, it's less painful for everybody, including us, if you're on the latest version of the browser, right? So within reason, we want you to be on the latest version of the browser.
Okay.
No XP, sorry.
But it's time to upgrade my Vista machine.
You can purchase a new operating system at the same time.
Past time.
Yeah, or that, yeah.
Still fix Vista bugs.
Yeah. I think we go back further in terms of, you know, what older OSs we support than most people. So, you know, if you haven't moved on from Windows XP or Windows Vista, please, you know, I'll walk to the company store myself and get you a version of Windows 7 and mail it to you.
Has there been any announcement about the release date for IE11 yet?
No, but you know, we are aggressive in getting this stuff out the door. You can kind of look at the Wikipedia page for IE and see the nice cadence of release dates and preview dates, and you know, extrapolate from that. So you know, but soon.
If you go to the WebGL samples,
Yep.
they all run?
Probably. I mean, like I said, we have a big, massive list of all the sites that we analyze. If they're just using Mr. Doob examples all
What
around.
about the Chrome experiments though, like WebAudio? I mean, there's other APIs as well.
Yeah,
Some
like
of those Chrome
Chrome.
experiments.
Yeah, so we don't have that yet. That was something we're looking into as well.
Is
But
WebAudio coming in?
not in 11, no. But we're keenly aware of WebAudio. It's an awesome API. It's a gigantic API. It's really cool stuff.
Yeah. Stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean we're very, very interested in it. Honestly, building WebGL is a gigantic project, and we are actually very aggressive in getting it into IE11. We just, you know, you have to draw the line somewhere.
No, absolutely, and that's huge. It's just it will open up the next
Exactly,
set of
yeah.
issues, which is
Oh, yeah.
they got to make their JavaScript fast. The good news is I was talking to Frank about this earlier. I mean, these guys know how to build language engines.
So I'm sure that your VMs are
Yeah.
screaming. But there are all the other APIs that go with this stuff, mouse lock and all the other stuff that people want to start wanting to build games. These become the real issues, otherwise the games are silent and they don't behave.
Well, that's the thing too, is because we want the same set of functionality, right? You can build a Windows web application, and we want you to have all the same capability that you have if you're writing, you know, any C code or whatever else in a native platform. So you guys want web audio, I want it too, right? I mean, we want to get off all the other, we want to get all the platform pieces in place there as well.
We'll be patient as long as we know it's coming. This is a huge step forward.
And Asm.js, are we getting it too?
We're looking into that as well. That's on the list as well. I don't know where we are with that.
Asm.js, because like it's not only end scripting is I believe it's the first target, but like Haskell guys are also doing the conversion to JavaScript. And Haskell is like super statically, like it's one of the most statically typed languages, and they could probably like.
Well, and you know Microsoft's also got TypeScript, so it's not. There's a lot of grayness out there.
Yeah.
You get this language stuff that's sort of.
Yeah, but
in that same vein with Dart. It's not Asm.js.
But Haskell is supported by Microsoft, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of buildings full of language people, so we definitely want to move the. JavaScript is great and JavaScript is terrible. We want to move it forward.
Recently did it as well. Like they are also doing it F# to JS conversion. There's Roy. Roy is now being supported by some company around here. Also, like a bunch of statically typed languages, like the conversion to Asm.js with all the types inferred. Since these languages, they have a much stricter typing system than C.
Don, why are you shaking your head, man?
It is very exciting. It's very
There's
exciting.
absolutely no reason why anybody would write Asm.js. It's if you have a bunch of C++ code and you want to run it on the web. That's it. That's the only reason for it. There's nothing. You're not going to access the DOM. You're not going to do anything. There's this total misinformation thanks to Mozilla, who was bullshit, brought this upon, where it's like, it's not reality. This is for getting something, your giant C++ code base to run in a browser. It's not for normal users.
That's to tie into that a little bit. That's a little bit of the opinion that Microsoft has too, or the IE team has as well.
And because it's bullshit.
On the one hand, it's awesome that you can take existing code bases and just make them work, right? So as a company that made a ton of money off of Compat, that's an awesome thing, right? But on the other hand, you shouldn't paint yourself into some very weird rogue corner, right?
Right, and I mean the V8 guys aren't too psyched on it. Anybody who works in like JavaScript or any VM guy is like, this is just a fucking hack.
But a cool hack, though.
It's a very cool hack, but it's a hack, but...
At least it didn't take 2 years to put it in there.
I mean, the misinformation around it is like it's some magic bullet, but it's not.
It's not, but you know what I mean? You have to, continually improve.
You do, but it's
not that way. It's not the right direction.
Well, you could argue
about
JSM or Dart.
I mean, I agree with everything I'm hearing, but...
the real-time communication or any of those APIs. But
if you're targeting, like...
No, APIs are different. It's different. This is a language feature, and no one is going to use it writing manually.
No one's going to use it immediately.
No.
Well, they might not debug it, but it might be their deployment strategy.
You would use TypeScript before using that, for sure.
Yeah, TypeScript or Dart, I mean, these are they're languages for programmers. The Asm stuff is a way to cross-compile. It's a deployment technique, which is great. God forbid you have to debug it, but I mean, maybe someday there'll be debugger support. That's good. But I think everything everybody said has got some validity, right? I mean, I think Don's right. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of confusion. People think that's the way folks are going to build applications going forward, but I don't see that.
Fairly active in Dart, in the Dart community. I don't know how many threads there have been where it's like, oh, it's going to perform better, Dart or some. But JS, and it's like, that's not the same. You're asking the wrong question here. And what sucks about JavaScript is committees. how long has ECMAScript 6 been? So long that Microsoft's like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna, you know.
I don't think that's the official company line, but.
It's essentially.
Armour said exactly that in his keynote this morning, didn't he?
Is, you know,
I wish that.
Don't
I'm gonna add classes and I'm gonna add types.
That was the right discussion. Adding types to it.
So kind of tying into the committee discussion there a little bit. I go to the W3C meetings. One of the things that I'd love to get feedback on this, but one of the things I've kind of seen personally is that there seems to be kind of a rough connection between all the various specs out there. It's like pointer lock and full screen and WebGL and Canvas. They all are kind of separate specs and separate universes.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like integrating those things better would be a worthwhile endeavor for somebody to undertake? Or is it just?
Yeah, my answer is yes, but good luck. Exactly.
Fair enough. Okay.
Happening in
Well, can you make it happen?
Well, because going long term, right? It should be something we do, right? Because you don't want this weird hodgepodge API
I think
surface.
it's a wonderful aspiration, right?
Okay.
It's just, it would take something like a Microsoft and others to execute it, because, there's a lot of pettiness in these committees.
Yeah, that's one of the things in W3C, that these things kind of start slowly and build. So we're kind of hearing bits and pieces where, hey, the web platform is great and it's growing, but it's very hodgepodge.
Yeah, I think providing you allow for a certain amount of entropy, because you can rigidly define it and not let people innovate, but there should be still room for some entropy and some change and some dynamicism in these things. But yeah, it's a good aspiration.
Okay. And to continue with that thought, are you going to what's WebGL on the console going to look like?
I have no idea. I'm not even allowed in the Xbox building, so you're asking the wrong person.
Okay.
I would love to see it though.
In most browsers, when you get WebGL errors, this has nothing to do. I can't even begin to decipher them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in your console.
Well, he means the browser console.
The browser
sorry, I meant like Xbox console.
Yeah,
sorry, that's one of the big things we have is we definitely want to enable good tooling. So we just redid our dev tools completely. Our F12 tools are completely new for IE11. We do feedback a bunch of WebGL context errors. I'm trying to find the most painful things in WebGL that you'd want to see in the console. So far, I think we've done a fairly decent job, but it's really tough to figure out what you put in the console, right?
right.
Are you talking to a new dev or a very experienced dev who just made a typo, right? It's tough. I'd love to hear feedback on what you don't like about your current WebGL console.
You also don't want to be dumping in every animation frame that happens.
Exactly, yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Hey guys, we should wrap up. Frank's still got a whole show to get through this week. So, any other questions or parting thoughts before we tie this up? Well, I want to thank you profusely for coming here. Thank Matt Harrington from Microsoft for inviting me to build this week. I wouldn't have come and seen you otherwise. That's awesome. Matt comes to these meetups sometimes. He's a local evangelist. He's awesome.
Before I forget, my Twitter is Frank Olivier at Microsoft, or email is Frank O. It's probably easier to remember, franko@microsoft.com. If you find an IE bug, which you probably will, send me email. If you
posting on my
have an
blog,
IE, please send me feedback. We'd love more feedback in the IE team.
Cool.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. And also, thanks to our other speakers, Theo, David. Many thanks to Game Salad for hosting, Bonus Group for sponsoring. Anybody here going to get to Anaheim for SIGGRAPH? Anyone here? Yeah, you're here. Great. There is a WebGL Birds of a Feather. There's a Collada Birds of a Feather. The relevant technologies we've discussed today will be covered there. And then we'll probably do another one of these in August sometime. So look forward to seeing you there. All right.